The most revolutionary thing one can do is always to proclaim what is happening. That's Rosa Luxemburg. Now, it is a great pleasure for me to introduce our first speaker, Betty Taylor. Betty has worked across the domestic violence sector for the past 30 years. She's a current member of the Child Death Review Panel, the Domestic Violence Death Review Board. She's also CEO of the Red Rose Foundation. Betty remains passionate about ending male violence against women and is a strong advocate for systemic change to bring equality and justice for women. So please join me in welcoming Betty Taylor.
Thank you, Adela and Anna. I too acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we stand, paying my respects to elders past, present and emerging. It's an honour and a privilege to be here. Today I'm talking about femicide. Femicide comes from fem, female, side, death. The opposite of homicide, the killing of everyone. Femicide is the deliberate killing of females, often arising out of the hatred of women. It's not new, even though the name's new. We go back through history and we see the burning of women as witches. Often the witches were demonised, said to have evil spirits within them. But often, particularly in England, the witches were the healers. They were the women that were bringing healing. And it was actually the rise of the medical profession and men who were threatened by that deemed them to be something different. In 1976, feminist author Diana Russell, who we've had in Australia for conferences, first started to use that term to describe what was happening to women within homes, within our relationships. In Australia today, 13 women have been murdered by men since the 1st of January. We try to talk this to be a national crisis, but no one's listening. I often say if we had 13 women murdered by terrorists, if we had 13 people killed by sharks, we would have urgent action. We'd be draining the sea. 13 women murdered. And it is about renaming this as femicide, the killing of women arising out of misogyny and the hatred for women. This won't change until we have, firstly, starting to name it and call it for what it is. When we allow this to happen within our society and not be shocked and alarmed by it. This isn't naming even the women who are just driven to suicide, that can't cope anymore. Where 1 in 4 women who suicide have done so against a backdrop of domestic violence. This week we have had 3 homicides. Yesterday the body of a woman was found in bushland, or they're looking for the body of a woman in bushland. Yesterday, Red Rose Foundation contributed to the funeral costs of a 21-year-old woman who was buried yesterday on International Women's Day. That we can have International Women's Day and celebrate the achievements for women, and I'm not detracting from that, but we as women must be lessened by the abuse that's happening around us. It's no good that we can have big corporate lunches and government doing tick boxes of all our achievements for women, working towards equality for women, when so many are getting left behind. The theme last year that I think needs to carry through every year is leave no woman behind. That women talk about report cards of reaching the glass ceiling. For some women that glass ceiling's so high they can't even see it. that when women still make up overrepresentation among the poor, among the homeless, among those that are disenfranchised around the world, that are outnumbered in rape victims, are outnumbered in domestic violence, we've got a long way to go. Yesterday we paid homage to the suffragettes and the suffragists that went before us, and one of those was Louisa Lawson, the mother of Henry Lawson. In the 1890s, Louisa Lawson said she wrote a newspaper called The Dawn, and in that newspaper she said, "In 100 years hence, who will believe that such a scandalous situation could occur where men could assault and beat women?" We're well past that 100 years and we still have such a scandalous situation where women are continually disbelieved and discounted, where women are believed like the witches, where they're demonised and blamed for their own situation. We've had other events around femicide. We've had situations like Jack the Ripper, the Boston Strangler, where they murdered prostitutes, and somehow that was a lesser crime because of where those women worked and what they did. Then we moved on to what became known as the Montreal Massacre. In Montreal, in the 1980s, at a university, a male engineering student took offence that women were allowed to study engineering. He arrived at the university with a gun. He separated out the male students and the female students, and he shot and killed every female student in the engineering faculty. His defence: women should never have been allowed into the university to study engineering. So no matter what women do, they're always going to be blamed. I talked yesterday also about the most recent death in Sydney, one of the most recent deaths in Sydney, of Dr. Denise Reedy. Tragically, the media just want to refer to her as the suitcase victim. She wasn't. She was a woman that aspired to follow her dreams. She studied dentistry. The doors of the university were open. The doors to her career were open. The only door that wasn't open to her was the door to leave an abusive partner. And for so many women, that's the door that slams shut. That women are murdered when they try to leave. Sitting on the Death Review Board, I know that is the single biggest issue for women, is daring to leave. They get blamed for wanting to walk out that door. And from our death reviews, there are other risk factors that we know of, particularly the work we do at the Red Rose Foundation around non-lethal strangulation, again a red flag indicator. But the audacity to open the door and walk away from an abusive relationship is still the single biggest thing that will get women killed. So when we talk about femicide, it's underpinned by misogyny. Misogyny across all levels of our society. And when we had the Prime Minister of Australia yesterday saying women can rise, women can find their place as long as it doesn't disadvantage men. When we have in our national parliament such an unbalance of representation, then as we